Check 1, 2, good afternoon everybody. I am going to give you a quick demo on how to create a scattering brush for use in our project working positive and negative space. This is kind of the part 1 of the setup. So let's take a look at Photoshop. I am going to create a new document, and in that document I'm going to choose letter as my size, and I will call it pos neg day 1, positive and negative. Now, I'm going to change the orientation from vertical to horizontal, or sometimes they call this portrait mode versus landscape. Just going to make it 11 by 8.5 rather than 8.5 by 11. Everything else I'm leaving the same. And then when presented with this canvas, what I want to do is press B to select the brush tool, and I want to use my very first brush called Hard Round. If you look under General Brushes, you can unpack it. You could pick Soft Round and then change the hardness. I'm just going to pick Hard Round, and then any size is fine. Anything around 100 would be okay, but you can also adjust with your left and right bracket keys to shrink or expand. What we want to do is make a horizontal straight line, so I'm going to hold Shift and just kind of drag out a straight line. Now this is the brush that's going to create hatch marks for us, and we'll be able to rotate it and play with it after we define it. Now I need to use my rectangle marquee tool. The keyboard shortcut for that is the letter M, and I will click and drag a box around what I want for my brush, and it's just this shape. So then I go Edit, Define Brush Preset, alright, and it's going to give me the opportunity to name it, and I will name it Hatch Brush Scatter, because we're going to make it scatter and kind of do a cross-hatching pattern. And it's hatch for hatch marks, which are like side-to-side marks, sometimes diagonal, or not my last name, it's just a coincidence. Now I'm going to go ahead and use my eraser, E for the eraser. I'll just erase what's in here. And I can go to Select, Deselect, because I don't need that box anymore. I'm going to make a new layer, new layer, and that's where I'm going to test my brush. So B for brush. All right, I can make it bigger or smaller with my bracket keys, or by changing the pixel size percentage. Basically right now it's going to look kind of like a calligraphy brush, in that if I go up and down it has a fat line, if I go diagonal it's a little different, and horizontal it's going to be thin. Okay, so that's kind of funky, but that's not really what we're going for. We want to make something that's going to make hatch marks. So in order to do that I have to press the F5 key, because I want to see the window brush settings. So I'm going to press F5. Then the brush settings that I want to play with first, there's this little circular thing that's going to let me drag and change the direction of the line. So I might want mine to go diagonal, okay? And I'm going to add some space until it starts to look separated. There we go. Alright, so now if I paint with this, it's got a much different quality to it, and that's kind of what we're going for to start. Alright, so that's test my brush. I tested the brush. I'm going to hide this layer, and I'm going to press Control Shift and the letter N to make another layer. I'm going to say test brush in rectangles. So I'm going to make a couple of rectangles with my rectangle marquee tool, and I'll use my brush and just kind of paint around in there so you can see how that's working. Alright, I'll make another rectangle, and this time I'm going to press F5 again because I want to change my brush settings. Okay, B for brush. Currently it's spaced and diagonal. This time I'm going to add some shape dynamics. I want some angle jitter. You'll notice that when I paint with this now, it's giving me a line, but the line looks almost like barbed wire. Okay, so that's working. Then I'm going to hit M for the rectangle marquee. I'll make another box. I'll hit B for brush. On this one I'm going to add scattering. Alright, we haven't done this since we did the stippling project, but if I add some scattering and then even up the count, then all of a sudden it fills the area much more quickly. And so these three settings, scattering, shape dynamics, and the brush tip spacing, If I want something to fill in very quickly, I can have very little spacing, and before you know it, it's mostly filled in. Okay. If I want it to have a lot of space, you go ahead and hit M for the marquee. All right. I'll hit B for brush, and then with a couple of passes, I've been very quickly able to add that. Now, the same thing works if I were to, I'll hit M for the marquee. I'm going to delete a big space of this in the center. Okay. Delete. Good. And then I'll make another marquee, M for the marquee. And I'm going to use the brush again. This time I'm going to shrink the brush down a lot. So it's going to make small marks. You can see it's still allowing us to fill in the space so that for our purposes, we're going to do a positive and negative project, positive and negative space. It still looks like a box even though it's not 100% solid. Okay, so that's where we're going with this. I'm going to stop the recording now. We've got our brush set up. Now we're ready to make a fun image. So let me save as, or save as a PSD. It's going to direct you to save either on your computer or on the cloud. I recommend you pick your computer. I like to save right on the desktop, although if you have a folder on your desktop or you want to go to your pictures folder, all of those are fine. So I'm going to save it just as whatever I named it, .psd. I'll save all my layers and brushes, and I'll be ready to move on to the next part. All right.